Thank you all for coming. I am by no means an expert on the flower of life. I shouldn't start with an apology, but I've just recently run across it, and I built a table which actually inspired this talk. The length of time working on that, you're bound to get insights of what you're working on, as you'll see further into the presentation. People that work with this and study it, meditate on it, or even just drawing it itself is enough to get downloads, I guess you could, is one way of putting it, or inspired thoughts, whatever. But making that table, I had several insights, which I'll share towards the end of the presentation. So, next slide, please. Is sound coming through the speakers? Okay, thank you. So we already saw this one. Wait, let's watch it again because other people haven't that are watching online. Thank you, online people. I was quite intrigued at the how clever this was put together. Is that the Pleiades in the background that I saw there? Did anyone notice the stars? That's the first time I spotted them. Anyway, next slide, please. The flower of life is a geometric symbol that consists of 19 overlapping circles. That's the usual number. It's not always 19. Sometimes it's more. Like on the table I built there, it's actually more. There's 91 circles there. And it can be found in all major cultures throughout the world. And so far back in time, no one can really say when it was discovered or acknowledged or whatever. But it's actually always been there. It's a symbolic structure of the universe itself. And interestingly, they use the same name for it across many or all of the cultures. Even though it's in different languages. This is the one on the left is the oldest known carving of it in stone. I've heard as recent as 5,000 years and as long as 20,000 years. They can't really tell for sure because it's difficult to carbon date stone. But it appears to have been laser etched. I mean, to carve something like that with hand tools is kind of ridiculous. You can't get that level of precision. And the other one is more of a 3D representation of it. Okay. Now, if you click again, I think you get click on the screen because it's missing the top bar. I don't know what I did there. I don't know if it'll go to the next slide or... There it is. I don't know what I did, but the top part didn't come through, and I don't know, still anyway, it's related to just about anything you can think of. It's mathematics, geometry, DNA, fractals, just on and on and on. And it's, the number 42 even. How many get that joke, number 42? It's life, the universe, and everything. It's in...
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Thank you. Hitchhiker's Guide. Another little video there. And is it possible to go full screen? Sure. This is just a short one. I think it ends pretty quick too. Not much explanation with this. It's just something nice to look at. A little bit of freebies here. Oh, is it possible to freeze frame on the last part of that? I'll tell you. Coming up in just a few seconds. Now, this, where am I pointing? The one in the center, now this is related to the 5 Platonic solids. And this is a misconception that has taken place quite a bit on the internet that's actually in error. The middle shape is known as a star tetrahedron or a Merkaba. It's not actually one of the Platonic solids. What's missing here, what it actually is the one on the upper left repeated twice. It's inverted and then rotated 120 degrees and then meshed together, and that makes a Merkaba, which we all have a Merkaba within us, and we're all learning about that. And once you can activate it, you can do some incredible things. But anyway, this is a misnomer. When you're looking up the Platonic solids, don't think that that is one of them. It's a double of the first upper left tetrahedron. The one that's missing here is the dodecahedron, which you'll see later in the presentation.
Octahedron. Yeah, the dodecahedron is it's the octahedron.
Octahedron,
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Watch the rest of it.
No, let's just go on to the next. Oh no, actually play it a little bit more. Sorry. Never mind. That's all right. So this is Nissan Haraman. I would like to talk a little bit about him. He is one of the most amazing scientists on the planet right now, being totally ignored by mainstream because he's got the correct ideas about the cosmology of the universe, and also just mind-boggling genius. I compare him to Einstein, even beyond Einstein, actually. And the reason he's ignored is they don't want you to know about what he's uncovered. He correctly predicted the mass of a proton, and then within a year they proved it scientifically. And lots of other things. He's actually discovered free energy machines, and he can't do anything about it yet, because if he did, they would probably kill him. But just an amazing person. I happened to attend one of his lectures in Southern California. I was very honored to be able to sit in the audience. I never met him or anything, but anyway, let's listen to a short video by him.
As I was calculating the packing of the plunks inside the volume of the proton and then on the surface of the proton, and I started to try to imagine how the little plump spheres would be tiled, I realized they would pack in such a way that they would have to be space-filling. And space-filling spheres makes up this symbol that we see in ancient civilization called a flower of life. And this flower of life symbol can be extrapolated from a tetrahedron array that I had heuristically from pure logic and observation of nature extrapolated to be the fundamental principle or the fundamental geometry of the structure of space-time, the structure of the vacuum, and that structure is in perfect equilibrium, so that the vacuum energy appears to us as nothing because it's everywhere, and wherever it's in equilibrium, we don't experience it. And so it was remarkable that after all these years, I had actually come to extrapolate the mathematics to get the proper answer for gravity and the mass of the proton and the radius of the proton and the gravitational coupling constant directly out of this metric that I had instinctively extrapolated much earlier. Now this tetrahedron array is in equilibrium, and where it is not in equilibrium, that is very close to the surface of the event horizon, there we experience the energy radiating from the vacuum, and there we see mass or energy.
I looked him up on Wikipedia, and he's not listed. There's a whole big long list of people don't want you to know about this stuff, what he's uncovered. Well, one of the reasons might be that he's self-taught. He's decided that university education would slow him down too much because he's such a brilliant man that he would just get bored sitting in his classes because he probably already knew more than most of the professors. So he lived in a van for a good number of years and just did his calculations and read what books he needed and just figured out so much of this stuff and just light years ahead of other physicists. So he's quite an amazing person. He's been nominated for a Nobel Prize. He probably won't get it because, like I say, they don't want you to know about him. Anyway, next slide. Now, this is another kind of a hidden person, Dan Winter. I'm not sure if he has a degree or not either, but he's another person that has a great deal of knowledge about the flower of life. So we'll just listen to a piece. This was a 2-hour presentation, and we're going to listen to about 2 minutes of it.
And what I want to start with is a picture from the literature by this Professor Moon at the University of Chicago, where he was modeling the electron shell and the nuclear geometrics as platonic solids. And he specifically showed that palladium here, I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but the palladium atom here is clearly dodecahedral. Remember in our little animation that if we stellate the dodecahedron, let's go here to the greater minis, that if we stellate the dodecahedron, here's a dodeca, icasa, and an outer dodecahedron. This stellation of the dodeca, icasa, dodeca is such that we have this edge length ratio 0.618, and then the stellation is 1.0, the icasa 1.618, and this stellation, again, edge straight out, is 2.618. So you have this perfect embedding, which is simply a crisscross of all values based on golden mean ratios. They can all add and multiply. This is the geometry of DNA, Earth grid, and zodiac, we believe, perfect embedding, and they may relate to the City of Revelation models, the foundation stone of theosophy. And yet, it's simply a model of perfect implosion.
Did you catch that foundation stone of theosophy?
Mm-hmm.
So he's sort of echoing what Nissan Harriman said there as far as the contact or the surface area being energetically neutral, and that's why we can't sense this, is because it's everywhere all the time, and we're in it, we're part of it. So we don't know it. It's like a fish doesn't know it's in water until you take it out of water. So, anyway, Dan Winter, another amazing person. So next slide. Now, can you go back one? If you look at the image on the left there, and next slide, compare that to the next picture. On the left, that is an actual electron microscope, and it's computer enhanced with color of a cross section of a DNA. That's what our DNA looks like energetically. And I think that's pretty incredible. I took a picture on the upper right there in Istanbul in 2012. At the time, I didn't even know what I was photographing. Oh, that looks pretty. Click. So later on, I discovered it's an echo of that. And here's another one that predates mine by a ton. Back, we don't know the exact year, but it was from Hildegard von Bingen, and she died in 1179, so it's sometime before that. And that kind of echoes that as well. So this is what our DNA looks like on a super microscopic level. So I thought that was fascinating. Next. Now let's start back at the basics and it started with just a simple circle. And the circle itself has a lot of significance within it. It's just a continuous line. It has no beginning, no end. It's beyond time. There's some simple math connected with it, pi r squared. And it's actually only a 2D representation of something that's 3D. Like the flower of life is what we normally see is only a 2D representation of something that is 3D and beyond. It actually goes into multiple dimensions. Next. So, as I said before, it's usually 19 circles, but it can be actually more than that. And it's just a very beautiful thing to look at. So next. Two circles form a Vesica Pisces. Next. And there's some interesting math with that. There's 30, 60, 90 degrees. 90 degrees isn't shown there, but it's pretty obvious in the center there. And lots of math derived from that. Next. So we get into the square roots. You can leave it there. Yeah, that's fine. So you got the square root of 2, 3, and 5, and those are irrational numbers. Do y'all know what a irrational number is? It means it goes on forever. The decimal points just continue without end.
And one reoccurring sequence.
Yes.
Sorry?
And a non-reoccurring sequence.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next. And we have some Christian symbolism here, and that's derived from the mandorla. So next. Mandorla is an Italian word for almond. And the real power of the mandala is pure woman's power. The story of the Bible with the number 153 subtly wants to tell that Mary Magdalene played an important role. The mandala also looks a lot like a vulva. In Sanskrit, vulva means yoni, which when you translate it back, you get the word, or the words holy passage. In a sense, a passage for the soul to the material world. Next. And there's some stonework showing the mandorla. So that's pretty ancient knowledge. And Hildegard von Bingen had a,
Yeah, sorry, Glenn.
that's all right, a vision, if you can go back, that she was able to, as best she could, put it in paint. And I don't know if it was her directly or Donna saying yes, it was her directly. And she's my art historian and partner. But yeah, so that was quite an amazing thing. There's far more into this than we can. I mean, you could meditate on this for years and get lots of information. But anyway, there's some more examples of mandalas in Christian art, and there's obviously many more than this, and in other religions as well. So next, we're kind of zooming through here. More recent ones, mandalas in crop circles. And I find the study of crop circles in itself is a whole nother area. We happened to meet, I'm missing his name right now, Donna. Freddie Silva, who was here in New Plymouth a few years back, and we had the honor of meeting him. He actually came to the spiritual center and did a talk there, and or the spiritualist church, I should say. And we got a copy of his book, and he signed it for us, and I lent it out and never saw it again. But that's okay. So yeah, it's appearing in crop circles as well as, next slide, flower of life symbols themselves. And so there's some very interesting crop circles, and not just about this stuff, but all kinds of stuff that I think we're being told some messages here that we learn to need to learn to understand. So there's a few more, and the Metatron's cube on the upper right there. And now we get into three circles, and we've got the Holy Trinity, the Triune, the Triluminary. Anyone know what a triluminary is? Yeah, have you heard of it? If you're a science fiction fan, you might know, but that's why I use that word in there. It's, anyway, next. There's a picture of the triluminary that actually comes from a show called Babylon 5. And it was very interesting. It was from the religious cast, and they stood between the light and the dark, and they were the Gray Council. Anyway, and I can't remember where that one image is. Anyway, well, next. So, as we add more circles, we get different names and different meanings of this is actually 7 circles, or 6 with 1 circle in the center, and that's called the seed of life. And like I say, I'm only recent in this. There's been people that have been studying the flower of life, the seed of life, the egg of life, and all that for years and years, and there's tons of books. And I've only recently gotten into it. I feel like I'm only scratching the surface. And what inspired it is the making of that table. And I spent about 2 days inking it in and painting it and doing all that. And you have ideas come to you and inspiration. And it taught me a lot. And then several people in here say you don't truly understand it until you draw it or make it. And I agree totally. Because you're spending time with it, you're actually absorbing knowledge through it. And we'll see a video about that. I think it's coming up, maybe. No, not yet. Anyway, Da Vinci studied the flower of life and discovered a lot of its mathematical properties. and the seed of life, the geometric figures, the platonic solids. I mean, he was head and shoulders above a lot of other people of his time, and just another super genius. So he used the phi ratio in a lot of his artwork, which makes it beautiful and symmetrical. Next. And he also discovered a relationship to music, pointing out the distance between the spheres is also the distance between notes. And this is some artwork by George Crumb at the bottom here. Next. Madame Blavatsky speaks of within two other withins. The idea that consciousness and life geometry speak metaphorically of how incubation occurs and suggests what is inside and ultimately outside the egg. Below you'll see the development of egg and cell division. First the egg divides into 2, then into 4, then into 8. At this point awareness is found by going back inside to see what just happened and to retrieve information about where to go. After retrieval takes place, the cells divide consistently in the original pattern, remembering at the time of the Trinity the third step in cell division. So we got a little gift there that Ben found for me. And the 7 circles there are called the egg of life. Okay. Now, it's the same number of circles on the right, it's just showing the overlaps there and how they connect. Okay. Now this also, within the Flower of Life, is the Kabbalah. And I won't go into that because that's Kayla's job.
You hurt me.
No, it's just way, I mean, there's umpteen books written on this and lifetimes of study by many, many, many people. So just know that it's within the Flower of Life. That's all you need to know. Also is the fruit of life, or another name for it is Metatron's cube. And I've heard some strange pronunciation of Metatron lately. And I think it's what I was hearing was just a computer trying to pronounce it, getting it very wrong. Anyway, that's an aside. But Metatron's cube, that is a whole nother basket of mathematics that is unending. So we'll start on that a little bit. And here's another video.
There is a fascinating aspect of sacred geometry known as Metatron's cube, and this is what it looks like. I've been making mandalas based on this archetype for a really long time, over 20 years. Thinking about it, contemplating it, meditating on it, just listening to it all these years. So the first question is, who is this guy, Metatron? Who is this being known as Metatron? Where did he come from? If you investigate, you find that Metatron was an archangel who was mentioned in Islamic, Judaic, and Christian mythologies, medieval mythologies. He was considered to be the scribe of God. So this would make the archangel Metatron the equivalent of the ancient Egyptian scribe of the gods known as Thoth, Hermes. Now, according to legend, a scribe of God would understand the root principles of creation, which are almost always associated with sacred geometry. In fact, the archangel Metatron is many times pictured with or holding a cube. So that's a little bit about Metatron, the guy Metatron. But the graphic, known as Metatron's cube, didn't show up till later, when a medieval Italian mathematician named Leonardo Costano discovered it. So the next question is, why and how did Leonardo come to call this particular graphic Metatron's cube? Well, the answer is simple. Number one, he probably had read, or not probably, he read the histories of Metatron. He was familiar with the legends. And number two, he was also familiar with sacred geometry, probably initiate in one of the schools, one or more of the schools that held those secrets. So between those two things, it points to the connection that Metatron's cube has with sacred geometry. And it traces right back to nature's first pattern and the 13 very special circles that are found inside the fourth consecutive circle of nature's first pattern. That's where it comes from. And when you connect the centers of those 13 circles, you get Metatron's cube. Oh yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Next. We have the 5 Platonic solids, and that's a very well-known thing, especially amongst mathematicians. So yeah, let's have a look at each one of those. The tetrahedron, the cube, or another name for the cube is the hexahedron, octahedron, dodecahedron, and the icosahedron. And there's lots of information about each one, and not just the mathematics of it, but kind of the more esoteric side of, it's a symbol of balance, physical and spiritual, spreads personal power and acceptance, and creates change. Now, I explained earlier that the Merkaba is actually 2 tetrahedrons superimposed within one another, and not a true Platonic solid. So next. And this key function of the hexahedron, or cube, is for grounding, and it connects us to the earth, which we all live under the illusion that we're separate from each other and separate from the earth. We're not. When you ground properly, you realize that you are an extension of the earth itself. Next. The octahedron is the air element, 4th dimension. It's connected with the heart, cultivates acceptance, forgiveness, love, and compassion. It's mirroring and self-reflecting, and so it helps us kind of monitor ourselves, look within ourselves, and kind of look at our own faults, which we all do too much of. We're all too self-judging. The icosahedron is the water element, sacral chakra. They're connected with different chakras. Teaches us to go with the flow, enhances creative thought process, freedom of emotional expression, unblocks and removes emotional stressors that block creative energies, and it's connected to sexuality, fertility, and reproduction. The dodecahedron is the ether element, connected with the third eye. It has to do with ascension. Represents divine creation associated with the universe. Expression of life, consciousness, and the universe. Okay, anyway, sorry. Now this is Terrence Howard. He's quite a well-known actor in America. And just very recently, he's at a Emmys award ceremony here, and he's been nominated for Emmys, I don't know how many times, quite a few. I'm not sure if I didn't research it well enough to know if he ever won an Emmy. He may have. But he's giving up his career as an actor, and quite a lengthy, had a look at his filmography, and it's quite extensive. He's been an actor most of his life. And so we'll watch a bit of what he says right here.
And I've made some discoveries in my own personal life with the science that, Pythagoras was searching for. I was able to open up the flower of life properly and find the real wave conjugations that we've been looking for 10,000 years. Why would I continue, walking on water for tips when I've got an entire generation to teach a whole new world?
That's a big remark. What do you intend to do?
Well, let me put it this way. All energy in the universe is expressed in motion. All motion is expressed in waves. All waves are curved. So where does the straight lines come from to make the platonic solids? There are no straight lines. So when I took the flower of life and opened it properly, I found a whole new wave conjugation that expose the in-between spaces. It's the thing that holds us all together.
So obviously, him studying the flower of life was life-changing for him. Here he is, a successful actor, and he's stopping all that to teach others what he knows. So I think that's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, go on, next slide. What happened at that talk was that immediately after, this is on YouTube, and it was kind of a news clip thing, and right after they're laughing at him and ridiculing him for doing what he's doing. They just don't get it, and they just... Anyway, here's another young man, Vasuda Das, and I just found him today. I just was kind of a last minute throw in there, so let's have a listen to that. I'm finishing early today, so this is the last video, I believe.
I highly recommend that everyone who's getting into the flower of life and just how many properties it may have outside of what I've already explained, draw out the flower of life. It's something that the more you draw it, the more you see within it. The shapes I talked about before, the Vesica Pisces, Metatron's cube, you can finally see these things very, very well once you've drawn the flower of life. And the more you draw it and meditate on this shape and really look at it and observe it and analyze it, the more you realize how much of the universe is encompassed within it. And by fully trying to understand just how important discovering this shape really was for a visualization of the universe itself, it makes it much easier for us to realize our interconnectedness with this universe, to realize that it is all one cosmological mind, and we are all one interconnected consciousness. The way I like to describe it is by looking at the flower of light, we sort of see a two-dimensional blueprint of the universe itself, of existence as we know it. And only by understanding this specific blueprint can we really start to understand at a very basic and core level the blueprint of not only ourselves, but the blueprint of the world around us, of the universe around us, of reality as we live.
It was very difficult to cut where I wanted to there because he speaks so fast. And so, as he said, and the other guy, lost his name.
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard?
No, the one before that, Gishart or Gish, something like that.
Charles Gilchrist.
Yep, thank you. You've been taking notes. So by drawing it and looking at it and working with it, you get these insights, which was for me, making that table is why I'm here now, because I would like to share some of my insights. Like, we all have different perspectives, and you can get your own from studying that. But what I got from making that is that we can relate ourselves to being individual selves, circles. If we're a circle, all we have is the inside and the outside. And we're spending way too much time looking outside and not looking within. And that's what we all need to do, is look within. And when we look within, we see our connection to nature, to everything, to others. And it's the overlapping circles that represent others in our life, how they impact us, our relationships. And all the people that we interact with are part of our circle, because we can't really exist without others. I mean, we could, but it would be boring. What if you were on the planet alone? That would be, why? So it's our interconnectedness that really, it kind of hit home for me. It's something I already understood, but in working with the flower of life, you know it. It just comes out at you. So I highly recommend going home, get a compass or something round, trace around it. And it's simple to do. All you have to do is make a circle, make another circle the same size, and intersect any part of the circumference with the center of the first circle, and keep doing that. And you can generate a flower of life, and it's just a wonderful experience. So it's better than watching YouTube or Facebook or whatever. So anyway, have a go. This is when I made the table, I just took stills of as I was coloring it, just to keep it seeing the different patterns. And I could have photographed it in lots of different ways than what's shown here. And I want to thank Ben for all his help on putting this together and his technical expertise. So thank you, Ben.
All good, Glenn.
And thank you, Jim. And thank everyone for coming. So, any questions? Oh, next slide. And I think there's one or two slides after that even. Another one? Sources, and if you want to photograph that to go look at where all this information came from, not all of it, some of it. And then there's another page, more sources. But like I say, I've only been into the flower of life a short while, and it's kind of opened another doorway for me. So thank you for allowing me to share about this.
Well, we thank you. Thank you.
Peter.
Yeah, I've got a question. All over the world, and also the number of Gothic cathedrals like Chartres in France, you find mazes.
Yep.
Are they related to the flower of life?
I think everything is related. Everything. I mean, even the flower itself, flower of life itself, can be a maze. I mean, the way I painted it was in a sequential pattern. I could have painted it in a maze pattern if I wanted to. Yeah, so everything is related.
They're all, the labyrinths and mazes are all based on sacred geometry.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions?
Were you drawn to those colors, do you think, for any reason?
No, it just felt right. Just felt right. And it felt wrong to paint the petals themselves, just the in-between parts. So it's just on, the wood itself is just plywood. It's left over from a project Donna was doing. And, I'll show you how it works.
Where is
here.
it going to live?
It's actually an altar for meditation and working, studying. What are we studying?
Well, we've been holding the elements on it as we.
Yeah, we put
as we
the elements
meditate.
on here.
Oh, it has a stick.
It's a little short by itself, so Maybe we stand for it.
Looks like it's supposed to have a potted flower in it.
Or fire.
Ah, that could, okay, wood, fire, yeah.
Hold it up for the camera, Glenn.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Nice.
Zoom in.
Make it.
You got enough light on there?
Heaps.
Oh, there we go.
It's interesting how as kids you play with kaleidoscopes and they're all end up being sacred geometric shapes like that, and they change. I think it's fascinating.
I remember back to 19, must have been, what year would that be? I was in the 6th grade, and I spent my entire class period, I'd start with a circle and put so many points on it, and then connect them all. And that's all I did, the whole 6th grade.
And he finally finished it.